How's it going, guys? I hope you're having a great day out there. And as you know, for the past few weeks, we've been waiting for this guy to show up. This is the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K for a shoot that we had with our buddy Brandon, who is actually a blacksmith. I can't wait to show you guys that video whenever it's complete. But I really wanted to talk today about my initial impressions with the Pocket 6K, some things that I like about it, some things that I don't like about it. I'm gonna flash some footage across while I'm talking as well. The first thing that I wanna talk about with this camera that I cannot get over is the image quality. And I've heard people talk about it for quite some time. My buddy Jordy actually used to shoot with Blackmagic exclusively, and he always talked about the image quality, B-raw, ProRes, and how great those things were. And whenever you first hear that stuff, you're like, sure, whatever, okay. But until you actually use it and realize the flexibility that you have, not only with RAW, but with the ProRes that's shot on this thing, it blew my mind. The first time that I've color graded any of the footage from the 6K, absolutely blew my mind. Image quality is out the roof on this thing. So that's one thing that I absolutely love about the Pocket 6K, and even the 4Ks, they have great image as well. Secondly, with the 6K, the menu system is so easy to use. I firmly believe that I could take somebody who's never shot video before, hook them up with this thing right here, and the menu system is so easy to navigate that I would dare say that a brand new shooter could probably use it day one with a little bit of training. This menu system reminds me a lot of my Canon cameras that I absolutely love because of their simplicity. Thirdly, we have a plethora of recording options, and kind of like I already alluded to, you've got your B-raw, you've got your ProRes, but even within those two options right there, you have so much flexibility with your frame rates, with your quality recording options. You can either choose constant bit rate or constant quality, things like that a mirrorless camera or DSLR typically do not have jam-packed into that thing. They are absolutely wonderful. So when it comes to your project and the recording options that you want to use for that, the options are limitless on this thing. And to me, that's something that's very valuable, especially when it comes to things like, okay, I have to think about storage. I have to think about how much data are we actually collecting whenever we're shooting these images. I think the project that we shot with Brandon ended up being almost 400 gigs of data. Mind you, that 400 gigs was shot in ProRes, not even shot in RAW. So those are things that you have to consider when it comes to shooting with a cinema camera versus a consumer or prosumer style camera. And really one of the final things when it comes to my initial thoughts on this camera are the ergonomics. Now this thing feels like a DSLR even though it is a cinema body. And that was something that, you know, coming from the mirrorless and DSLR game, I really liked. I love the hand grip. It feels exactly like a normal camera would. Now we had this thing fully rigged out for the shoot, so we didn't actually get to use it like a DSLR. It was locked off on the tripod, but either way, if you're wanting to run and gun, I do believe this would be a good run and gun option. If you want to go with just the body and a simple cage, or even just the body and the lens, that's all you have to have for the most part just to get shooting. Now let's get to some cons that we experienced with our initial use of the 6K, and these are things that after having some conversation with my friend Jordy, who like I said was a big Blackmagic guy, and reading a ton of forums, these are things that I've come to find out obviously are prevalent with Blackmagic. Number one, on this camera body in particular, battery life is absolutely atrocious. Now I knew that going into it because it does use the smaller Canon style batteries. For the shoot, we did have the D-tap cable, so it was externally powered, but going back to the people who want to run and gun with this body, if you do run and gun body only, no V-mount battery, no AC power, make sure you carry a pocket or a bag full of Canon LPE6 batteries. You're gonna need them. I think on the LPE6, it will shoot maybe for 15 or 20 minutes. That's really all I could get out of it. So battery life is absolutely terrible on this camera, but that's okay. We don't buy it for battery life. The next thing that I wasn't really impressed with on the 6K, and once again, these are things that after you dive into the forums or talk with people who have experience with them, are the little quirks, and each camera has its own quirk. This one's quirk, and I don't know if it was maybe the cable we were using or just this body being that it is a rental. There were a couple of times, now not on the shoot day, on shoot day it performed flawlessly, but there were some times whenever I was shooting test footage where it would randomly stop recording and shut off. And I would let it sit, turn it back on, and it would shut off again. So I don't know if that was something I was doing or maybe I was letting the battery get too low. I was checking the battery readout and it looked like it had 20 to 25%, but it would just stop recording. Let me backtrack. There actually was a point in time on our actual shoot day where the camera would not record more than about 3 to 4 seconds. And what we discovered was we had changed USB-C cables from the camera to the T5 drive that we were shooting to. It was not the factory T5 drive cable, and for whatever reason, the camera didn't like that, drive didn't like that, so the camera let us know that it was not going to record to it. And that's one thing that I was actually pretty appreciative of, is if this thing is going to drop frames, it will stop recording. There's an option that you can choose in the menu for that. However, the random shutting off on my test footage not cool. Luckily it didn't happen on shoot day, so that's just one of the quirks of this camera, I guess, and those are things that you have to get used to. Can't really complain because for a cinema body you're only paying $2,500, so I guess that's to be expected when it comes to quality control. Maybe something Blackmagic wants to work on with that, but like I said, just little quirky things. And I guess really my last complaint with the 6K, I know I talked about the different recording options and how that's great. One thing that I wasn't a huge fan of is with a lot of those recording options come different crops and different aspect ratios, so just be aware of that. Take for example, if you are shooting in RAW 6K and you want to go to 60 frames a second, it will crop it to a 2:4:1 aspect ratio, which is widescreen instead of full 6K resolution. It's not cropping in on the sensor, you're still getting the full sensor readout, but once again, it's a different aspect ratio than maybe you would want to shoot. So if you are shooting full 6K RAW, you are limited to 50 frames a second, which isn't a huge issue, but you know, if you want even slower motion with the 60 frames, you do have to drop it to 2:4:1 aspect ratio. Or if you are shooting in ProRes, I think ProRes will shoot 60 frames regardless of if you're in ProRes Lite, HQ, 422, whatever, and it will shoot that in full 4K. Cool thing about the 4K on this is it is actually downscaled from the full sensor, from the full 6K sensor readout, so it's not cropping in on the sensor for the 4K. That was something that was actually a positive that I didn't mention earlier. So yeah, that is my initial impressions of the Pocket 6K. Overall, I had a very pleasant experience, minus the little quirks with the camera. I really enjoyed shooting with it. Probably will shoot with it again. I know in my last video I said that I was pretty much switching from Canon. I believe when it comes to video, I will still stand firm in that statement. Now, we are gonna be renting another cinema body in the near future, so we're not gonna go ahead and swap the card for this thing just yet, but when it comes to video, if we don't like the other cinema body over this one, and I'll keep you guys informed on that, definitely can see the 6K as a viable option, especially with the 6K Pro being out now. I believe that Blackmagic will probably drop the price of this a little bit, or if they don't, $2,500 is still a heck of a deal for a full-blown cinema camera. With all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I greatly appreciate it. I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below about the Blackmagic ecosystem. I'm new to it. My first experience was pretty nice. Maybe some of you guys can explain some of the quirks that I experienced, or maybe you have a workaround for those quirks. Either way, I greatly appreciate this community here on YouTube. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you on the next.